What is going on, everybody? I am back today to talk about a new movie that was released directly onto Hulu. That, to be quite honest with you, I didn't really read much about this movie before I went in to watch it. All I did was look at the cast of this movie and was like, yeah, I'm sold. And sometimes that's all you need for me to get invested into a movie. And I was really looking forward to this, especially with Sarah Paulson at the lead. I think she is such a talented actress, and she always seems to give it 100% whenever she does anything. And the movie I'm going to be telling you about today is Hold Your Breath. Hold Your Breath is directed by Will Joines and Karrie Crouse. In 1930s Oklahoma, amid the region's horrific dust storms, a woman is convinced that a sinister presence is threatening her family. So, as I said, sometimes all you need to get me to watch a movie is to have really great actors involved. And so I went into this with an open mind, and my reaction to this movie is somewhat confused. I think that this movie is very well shot. It creates incredible atmosphere, and it has some absolutely incredible, captivating performances. But I didn't care all that much about the story, unfortunately. I feel like the narrative and the way things play out, it's almost like too convenient where it goes. Like the way that it wants to build suspense and the way that it wants to like give you shock value in the third act, it's almost like, okay, we have to do something here to keep the audience on board. And I wasn't really a fan of the direction that it went into. I think there's some interesting choices building up to that selection, but I just left the movie like, wow, that was incredibly captivating in moments. There was great performances. It looked beautiful. But would I really watch it again? And I think that's what makes it a conflicting experience for me. And I'll talk to you about it when I break the movie down as a whole. So at the beginning of the movie, we are introduced to the Bellum family, who the matriarch is Margaret Bellum, played by Sarah Paulson, and she lives at home with her two daughters, her older daughter Rose, and then her younger daughter Ollie, who is mute. She has not spoken since her father has left, I believe. Something happened. They explain it early on into the movie as to why she is unable to speak. And the father has left to go to Philadelphia to get work to help provide for the family. And this is during a period of time in Oklahoma where they were having these horrible, horrible dust storms that if you got caught out in one of these storms, you were killed immediately. Like there's no way to survive. You couldn't stay out for a long period of time. You had to find shelter. They make these masks for themselves. We can tell Margaret is having a very hard time just living with day-to-day life. She goes to these community meetings in town with these other women that are constantly checking up on her. We hear about all these things going on in the community, while simultaneously we hear this story that the children at Margaret's house are talking about this man. I think they call him like the gray man, something like that, who is able to appear, kind of terrorize you and travel through the dust outside. So one day the family goes into their barn and they find this man sleeping in the barn, and his name is Wallace, and he is played by Ebon Moss-Bachrach, which a lot of you may know from the TV series The Bear. And he says that he is a minister and that he has a very close connection with God and that he's a spiritual healer. And one of the young girls starts to get a nosebleed and he's able to make it stop immediately. And so he starts living there and things start to get more normal for the family, while at the same time seemingly supernatural occurrences are happening around the house. And the entirety of the film is us trying to figure out, what is this man's intentions, and is there something actually supernatural going on around the house? So like I said, very conflicted about this movie, so I'm going to start with the positives. The cinematography and the atmosphere in this movie is absolutely incredible. They do an amazing job at kind of showcasing the isolation of these houses while also like emphasizing the danger of these dust storms and like showing some of the horrific deaths surrounding these dust storms. It's brutal. They show some really gnarly stuff that I really appreciated that they didn't hold back from. And I really like that it's driving a lot of the town crazy because like you're trapped inside. There's only specific times during the day that you can actually get out and about. And I can only imagine living in that area and experiencing those things And I think utilizing the cinematography and building atmosphere that way works really well to the film's advantage. I also loved the sound design in this movie. They do a really excellent job really paying attention to specific sounds to kind of send chills up your spine as a viewer and make you think about exactly what is occurring in front of you. And I think the great attention to detail in the sound design and the cinematography make the movie a very compelling watch. The performances here from top to bottom are exceptional, especially Sarah Paulson's performance, who she has to do a lot in this movie. She is carrying most of this movie on her back, and I think she's incredible. But I also think the two young actresses who play the daughters do a phenomenal job as well. They do feel like a very realistic family unit. I like the way they build the chemistry between the family members, and I think that's executed very well. I like the way that the horror is utilized in this movie. It's very subtle. It's not like there's a couple of cheap jump scare sequences where it's more of like a cutaway to a horrific image. But I think most of what this movie is trying to do is build dread and make you feel the dread that this family is experiencing. And so that all of those things are very, very successful. The problem is here, this movie feels like it's trying to be 300 different things, and it cuts each and every which way, and it makes it really difficult for it to stick the landing. For starters, you get the whole inner family drama, introducing this supernatural character, talking about how the father's gone, then introducing this conflict about how they're perceived in the community. They bring this other character in who's having some struggles, who she's looking like she's kind of falling off the deep end, and she's dealing with all these things mentally and having a hard time raising her children. And then that cuts back to the parallel of Sarah Paulson's character. Then you introduce Ebon Moss-Bachrach's character, and you try to like parallel him to this supernatural character that exists. Then it becomes a thing about the lead character's sanity, and it's just all over the place to where I'm like, this is an hour and a half. Pick one thing and stick to it. It's really difficult for me to stay invested when you're like, okay, first it's going to be this, then it's going to be this, then it's going to be this, but every bit of it doesn't pay off in a way that's satisfying. And when you eventually get to the third act, I feel like the ending was just like, okay, they wanted shock value, so they gave you shock value, but it's not satisfying in any way, shape, or form. They could have gone in 10 other directions that would have been far more interesting than the direction that they actually took the movie in. And that's what kind of left a sour taste in my mouth by the end of this film, is I just feel like it was very sloppily put together. I feel like the narrative as a whole is just not effective comparatively to all the other things that are working for the movie. The great cinematography, the excellent performances, the fantastic sound design. And if all of that would have been accompanied by a better script, I think this movie would have been one of my favorite horror films of the year. But instead, it's something that is very watchable, but I think relatively underwhelming in its execution. And if any of the stuff I talked about earlier sounds interesting to you, I think it's worth at least one watch. But I was a little bit disappointed in the end. So have you seen Hold Your Breath? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Leave me a comment down below and let me know what you thought. I thought this movie had a lot of really great things going for it, but ultimately I was relatively unsatisfied by the end product. As always, if you can like the video and subscribe to the channel, helps me out a lot and lets me know the type of content you're looking for. I'm always putting out new material and look forward to getting more out for you in the near future. And as always, everyone, thank you so much for watching and have a great rest of your day.